At 7:23 on April 7, 1945, Lieutenant Commander Eugene Fluckey watched Yamato emerge from the morning haze off Kyushu. 862 feet long, 72,800 tons fully loaded. The largest battleship ever built. 9 18.1-inch guns that could fire 3,200-pound shells 26 miles. Armor plate 16 inches thick on the main belt, 25 inches thick on the gun turrets. The battleship had survived 2 years of war, survived American air attacks at Leyte Gulf, survived torpedo strikes in the Philippines. On April 7th, Yamato was steaming north with 8 destroyers and 1 light cruiser. No air cover, 2,500 miles of fuel, one-way trip. The orders were simple. Beach the ship on Okinawa. Use the main guns as stationary artillery until ammunition ran out. Then die fighting. The Japanese called it Operation 10 Go. The Americans called it suicide. If you want to see how Yamato's last battle turned out, please hit that like button. Every like helps this story reach more viewers. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Yamato. Yamato was commissioned on December 16, 1941, 8 days after Pearl Harbor. The battleship represented Japan's answer to American industrial capacity. Japan could not outbuild the United States. Japanese shipyards could not match American production rates. So Japan would build ships so powerful that numbers would not matter. One Yamato could defeat 3 American battleships. That was the theory. The theory had never been tested in battle. The battleship's construction was a national secret. Workers at Kure naval arsenals signed documents swearing them to silence. The construction dock was covered with camouflage netting. The ship's specifications were classified beyond top secret. American intelligence knew Japan was building large battleships. They estimated 45,000 tons. The actual displacement was 72,800 tons. American intelligence was off by 27,800 tons. The error would have consequences. Yamato's main battery consisted of 9 18.1-inch guns arranged in 3 triple turrets. The guns were the largest ever mounted on a warship. Each gun weighed 162 tons. Each shell weighed 3,200 pounds. Maximum range was 26 miles. The shells could penetrate 16 inches of armor plate at 20 miles. No American battleship could match that firepower. No American battleship had armor thick enough to withstand those shells. The battleship's armor was equally impressive. The main belt was 16 inches of hardened steel. The deck armor was 9 inches thick. The conning tower had 19.7 inches of armor. The gun turrets had 25.6 inches on the faceplates. The ship was designed to survive hits from 16-inch shells. American battleships mounted 16-inch guns. Yamato could take their best shots and keep fighting. That was the design philosophy. But World War II was not decided by battleship duels. It was decided by aircraft carriers. By April 1945, Japan had lost most of its carriers, lost most of its trained pilots, lost control of the air. Yamato's massive guns were irrelevant if American aircraft could sink the ship before it reached firing range. The Imperial Japanese Navy understood this. They sent Yamato on a suicide mission anyway. Operation 10 Go was planned in late March 1945. The American invasion of Okinawa had begun on April 1st. Japanese forces on the island were fighting desperately, but losing. The Imperial Navy had few options. Most of the fleet was destroyed or immobilized by fuel shortages. Yamato was one of the few capital ships still operational. Admiral Seiichi Ito commanded the operation. He knew it was suicide. He protested the orders. His protests were overruled. The plan was straightforward. Yamato would steam from Tokuyama to Okinawa, approximately 400 miles. The ship carried enough fuel for a one-way trip. No provision for return. No provision for retreat. Yamato would beach itself on Okinawa's western shore. The crew would use the main guns to bombard American forces until the ammunition was exhausted. Then the crew would abandon ship and fight as infantry. The ship would die. The crew would die. But they would inflict maximum casualties on the Americans first. Yamato departed Tokuyama on April 6, 1945 at 15:20. The task force consisted of Yamato, the light cruiser Yahagi, and 8 destroyers. Total force, 10 ships, 4,000 men, no air cover. Japanese naval aviation no longer existed in operational terms. A few dozen aircraft remained. Not enough to defend a task force, not enough to matter. The ships would sail alone. American submarines detected the task force within hours. USS Threadfin spotted Yamato at 2000 on April 6th. The submarine shadowed the Japanese ships through the night, transmitted position reports every hour. By dawn on April 7th, American commanders knew exactly where Yamato was. They knew where it was going. They knew it had no air cover. The Americans prepared a reception. Task Force 58 was the most powerful naval aviation force ever assembled. 11 fleet carriers, 6 light carriers, 7 battleships, 18 cruisers, 58 destroyers. The carriers alone could launch more than 1,000 aircraft. Admiral Mark Mitcher commanded the task force. When reports confirmed Yamato was heading toward Okinawa, Mitcher made a simple decision. Sink it. Use everything necessary. Do not let that battleship reach the invasion beaches. The first strike launched at 10 o'clock on April 7th. 280 aircraft, Hellcat fighters, Helldiver dive bombers, Avenger torpedo bombers. The aircraft formed up over the task force and turned north. Flight time to the target area was approximately 90 minutes. Yamato would have no warning. The battleship's radar was primitive. Detection range was less than 20 miles. By the time Yamato's radar detected the American aircraft, they would already be diving. Admiral Ito knew the attack was coming. He had no illusions about survival, but he had orders. Get to Okinawa. Use the battleship's guns against the American invasion. Die trying. At 10 o'clock, Yamato was making 24 knots. The sea was calm. Visibility was excellent. The crew was at general quarters. Anti-aircraft guns were manned. Damage control teams were ready. The ship was as prepared as possible for what was about to happen. The American aircraft appeared at 12:32. Yamato's radar had detected them at 12:20. 12 minutes warning. Not enough time to maneuver significantly. Not enough time to prepare adequately. The ships could only increase speed and begin evasive maneuvers. Yamato worked up to 27 knots. The destroyers fanned out to provide anti-aircraft support. The light cruiser Yahagi took position on Yamato's port beam. The formation was as tight as doctrine allowed. The first wave attacked at 12:41. 53 aircraft, Helldivers and Avengers. The dive bombers attacked from high altitude. The torpedo bombers attacked from wave-top level. Classic anvil attack. Force the target to choose. Maneuver to avoid bombs and expose yourself to torpedoes. Maneuver to avoid torpedoes and expose yourself to bombs. There was no correct choice, only degrees of damage. Yamato's anti-aircraft battery was formidable. 24 5-inch dual-purpose guns, 162 25mm anti-aircraft guns. The guns opened fire at maximum range, the sky filled with black bursts of flak. Tracer rounds created webs of fire. 2 American aircraft fell in the first minute. Another 3 were damaged, but the rest kept coming. The first bomb hit Yamato at 12:43. A 1,000-pound bomb from a Helldiver. The bomb struck the battleship's forward deck. The explosion created a 30-foot crater. The deck armor held. The bomb did not penetrate. Minor damage, minor casualties. But the hit proved the battleship was vulnerable. The armor could be penetrated. It just required heavier weapons in the right places. The first torpedo hit at 12:45, port side amidships. The Type 91 torpedo carried a 1,000-pound warhead. The explosion created a 40-foot hole in Yamato's hull. Water poured into the ship. The damage control teams responded immediately. Watertight doors sealed, pumps activated. The ship took a 5-degree list to port, still operational, still fighting, but wounded. The second torpedo hit 30 seconds later, port side forward. Another massive explosion, another hole, more flooding. The list increased to 8 degrees. Yamato's captain ordered counterflooding on the starboard side. Pumping water into starboard compartments would balance the ship. The procedure was standard. It worked. The list decreased to 3 degrees. But the ship was heavier now, slower. The maximum speed dropped from 27 knots to 23 knots. The first wave broke off at 12:50. 9 minutes of attack. 2 bomb hits, 2 torpedo hits. Yamato had survived but was damaged. The American aircraft reformed and returned to their carriers. Pilots reported the battleship was still afloat, still moving, still operational. Admiral Mitcher ordered a second strike. 100 aircraft this time. Finish the job. Yamato's damage control teams worked frantically during the 30-minute gap between attacks. Pumps were clearing water from flooded compartments. Welders were shoring up damaged bulkheads. Medical teams were treating casualties. Approximately 50 men were dead or wounded from the first attack. The ship's company numbered 2,750. They could absorb those losses. But more attacks were coming. The second wave appeared at 13:20. 100 aircraft from 4 different carriers. This attack was better coordinated than the first. The aircraft came from multiple directions simultaneously. North, south, east, west. Yamato could not maneuver to avoid all attack vectors. The ship's captain chose to turn into the southern attack. That exposed the port side to torpedoes from the north. It was the best option among bad choices. The bombs came first. 3 hits in the first minute. All struck the superstructure. 1 bomb hit the base of the forward fire control tower. The explosion killed everyone in the tower. Yamato's main gun director was destroyed. The main battery could still fire, but accuracy would suffer. Another bomb hit the aft superstructure. The explosion destroyed radar equipment and communication lines. The third bomb penetrated the deck armor near turret 2. The explosion killed 30 crew members in the handling room below. Then came the torpedoes. 4 hits on the port side within 2 minutes. The cumulative damage was catastrophic. Water flooded multiple compartments faster than pumps could clear it. The list increased to 15 degrees. Counterflooding could not correct it. The ship was taking on thousands of tons of water. Speed dropped to 18 knots. Yamato was dying. Admiral Ito understood the situation. The battleship could not reach Okinawa, could not complete the mission, could not even survive the day. But the crew could still fight. The anti-aircraft guns were still firing. The main guns could still rotate. Ito ordered the main battery to target American aircraft. The 18.1-inch guns were designed to fire at ships 26 miles away. Firing at aircraft was improvisation, desperation. The main guns fired twice. Each time, a 3,200-pound shell exploded at altitude, creating a massive burst of shrapnel. The shrapnel damaged 1 aircraft. The psychological impact was greater than the physical damage. American pilots had never seen battleship guns used as anti-aircraft weapons. It was terrifying. It was also pointless. The guns could not track fast-moving aircraft effectively. The rate of fire was too slow. After 2 salvos, the gun crews gave up. The second wave broke off at 13:35. 15 minutes of attack, 3 bomb hits, 4 torpedo hits. Yamato was listing 20 degrees to port. Speed had dropped to 12 knots. The ship was finished. Admiral Ito knew it. The captain knew it. The crew knew it. But they kept fighting. They would fight until the ship sank or the Americans stopped attacking, whichever came first. The third wave appeared at 1400. 70 aircraft. This time, the Americans concentrated their attacks. All torpedoes targeted the port side. The goal was to capsize the ship through asymmetric flooding. The tactic worked. 3 more torpedoes hit the port side between 14:05 and 14:17. Each torpedo accelerated the inevitable. The list increased to 25 degrees, then 30 degrees, then 35 degrees. At 14:20, Admiral Ito transmitted his final message. To all units, you have fought well. Save yourselves. The transmission was brief, professional. Ito removed his medals and handed them to an aide. He ordered the bridge crew to abandon ship. Most refused. They would stay with the admiral. They would die with the ship. Ito did not argue. He understood. The list reached 40 degrees at 14:23. Men were sliding across the deck. Equipment was breaking loose. The ship was rolling. The captain ordered abandon ship. Crew members jumped into the water. Some made it to destroyers that had moved closer to pick up survivors. Many did not. The water was cold. The sea was rough. Men who survived the battle would die from exposure or drowning. At 14:23, the list reached 50 degrees. The ship was on its side. Water poured through ventilation shafts and hatches. Men trapped below decks had no escape. Hundreds drowned in the dark compartments as the sea claimed the ship. The anti-aircraft guns were silent now. The crews had abandoned them or died at their stations. The main guns pointed uselessly at the sky. The mighty Yamato was beaten. At 14:23, Yamato capsized completely. The ship rolled inverted. For a few seconds, the barnacle-covered hull was visible above water. Then the ship began to sink. The descent accelerated. The stern went down first. The bow pointed skyward. 862 feet of steel sliding into the Pacific. The largest battleship ever built. Dying. At 14:23 and 30 seconds, Yamato's forward magazines exploded. The ship was at a depth where water pressure was compressing the magazines. The pressure triggered sympathetic detonations. All remaining main gun ammunition exploded simultaneously. The blast was visible 100 miles away. A mushroom cloud rose 20,000 feet into the air. The shockwave created a massive underwater bubble that lifted destroyers 100 feet from the explosion. The explosion killed hundreds of men in the water. Killed men who had survived the battle and the sinking. Killed them in the final seconds. When the smoke cleared, Yamato was gone. The battleship had taken 2 hours to sink. Had survived approximately 12 bomb hits and 10 torpedo hits. Had killed 10 American aircraft. Had wounded dozens more. The ship had fought until it physically could not fight anymore. Then it died. With it died 2,498 crew members. Admiral Ito, the captain, most of the officers, most of the crew. Only 269 men survived. The destroyer Yukikaze rescued 136 survivors. The destroyer Hatsushimo rescued 90. Other destroyers recovered 43 more. The men pulled from the water were covered in oil, burns, injuries. Many died from their wounds in the hours after rescue. The final survivor count was 269 from a crew of 2,767, a 90% casualty rate. The light cruiser Yahagi was also sunk. 7 torpedo hits. The ship broke in half and sank in minutes. 4 destroyers were sunk: Isukaze, Hamikaze, Kasumi, and Asashimo. Each destroyer fought until it could not fight anymore. Each destroyer died defending Yamato. The remaining 4 destroyers escaped and returned to Japan. They reported the battle. They reported Yamato was gone. The Imperial Japanese Navy's most powerful battleship had been destroyed before firing a single shot at the enemy in its intended role. American losses were minimal by comparison. 10 aircraft shot down, 12 aircraft damaged beyond repair, 24 aircrew killed or missing, 88 aircrew wounded. The exchange ratio was brutal. The United States lost 24 men to sink a battleship and kill 2,498 Japanese sailors. The mathematics of industrial warfare were undeniable. American aircraft production exceeded Japanese battleship production by orders of magnitude. The United States could afford these losses. Japan could not. The sinking of Yamato marked the end of an era, the battleship era. The era when armored warships with massive guns dominated naval warfare. World War II proved that aircraft carriers were more important than battleships, proved that air power trumped armor and guns. Yamato was the ultimate expression of battleship design, the largest, the most heavily armed, the most heavily armored. None of it mattered when hundreds of aircraft could attack simultaneously from multiple directions. Yamato's wreck was discovered in 1985. The ship sits in 1,120 feet of water, approximately 180 miles southwest of Kyushu. The wreck is broken into multiple sections. The bow section is relatively intact. The stern section is heavily damaged. The midship section, where the magazines exploded, is completely destroyed. Nothing remains but scattered debris across 600 yards of ocean floor. Japanese law protects the wreck as a war grave. No salvage is permitted. No artifacts may be removed. The ship is a tomb for 2,498 men. Survivors of Yamato rarely spoke about the sinking, the shame of defeat, the guilt of survival. Japanese military culture did not honor survivors. It honored those who died. The men who lived carried that burden for decades. Some committed suicide. Others lived quietly. A few eventually shared their stories. One survivor, Ensign Mitsuru Yoshida, wrote a book called Requiem for Battleship Yamato. The book described the battle in detail, described the chaos, the fear, the deaths, the explosion. Yoshida's account remains the most comprehensive survivor testimony. The question of whether Yamato could have changed history remains debated. If the battleship had engaged American surface forces in 1942 or 1943, when Japanese naval aviation still existed, the outcome might have been different. Yamato's 18.1-inch guns could have destroyed any American battleship. The ship's armor could have withstood American shells. In a surface engagement, Yamato might have been invincible, but that engagement never occurred. By the time Yamato entered combat in 1944, the war had moved beyond battleship duels. Aircraft decided battles. Yamato had no counter to massed air attacks. Some historians argue Yamato was obsolete before it was launched. The battleship was designed in the 1930s when battleships were the most powerful weapons afloat. But Pearl Harbor proved carriers were more important. The Battle of Midway confirmed it. By the time Yamato was commissioned in December 1941, the Pacific War was already an aviation war. The battleship was a magnificent anachronism, beautiful, powerful, irrelevant. Other historians argue Yamato was misused. The ship spent most of the war in port, too valuable to risk, too important to lose. Japanese commanders hoarded the battleship for a decisive battle that never came. By April 1945, that decisive battle was impossible. Japan had lost the war. Yamato's suicide mission was a gesture, an expensive, bloody gesture that accomplished nothing strategically. The ship's death did not slow the American advance, did not prevent Okinawa's fall, did not change the war's outcome. It just killed 2,498 men who might have survived if kept in port. The crew of Yamato deserves recognition separate from debates about the ship's strategic value. The men fought bravely, fought skillfully, fought against impossible odds. They manned their guns until the ship capsized. They followed orders knowing those orders were suicide. Some historians call that fanaticism. Others call it duty. The men themselves called it service. They served their country, served their emperor, died doing both. Admiral Ito knew Operation Tengo was suicide. He protested the orders. When his protests were overruled, he accepted his fate. He led his men into battle, knowing they would die. He stayed on the bridge when the ship capsized. He went down with Yamato. That was leadership in its most tragic form, leading men into death because duty demanded it. Modern military ethics would call such orders criminal. World War II was a different era with different rules. The American pilots who sank Yamato were doing their jobs, following orders, eliminating a threat to the Okinawa invasion. They were professional, skilled, brave. They flew into intense anti-aircraft fire, lost comrades, completed the mission. When they returned to their carriers, they reported the battleship sunk. No celebration, no cheering. Just another mission completed. Another target destroyed. The war continued. Yamato's legacy is complex. The ship represents Japanese naval engineering at its peak, represents national ambition and industrial capacity, represents a military philosophy that emphasized quality over quantity. That philosophy failed against American industrial might. But the ship itself remains impressive. The largest battleship ever built, the most heavily armed, the most heavily armored. An engineering marvel that proved engineering cannot overcome strategic reality. Modern Japan remembers Yamato with mixed emotions. Pride in the engineering achievement, shame over the waste. The ship cost enormous resources to build. Resources Japan could not afford. The construction consumed steel that could have built destroyers, submarines, or aircraft carriers. Weapons that might have been more effective. But Japan built Yamato anyway. Built the ultimate battleship in an era when battleships were becoming obsolete. The story of Yamato is ultimately a story about the end of an era. The battleship era lasted roughly 100 years, from the 1850s to the 1950s. Battleships were the most powerful weapons on Earth during that period. Yamato was the final evolution, the ultimate battleship, and it died proving that evolution had reached a dead end. The future belonged to aircraft carriers, to aviation, to weapons that could strike from beyond visual range. Yamato could not fight what it could not see, could not hit what it could not reach, could not survive what it could not escape. April 7, 1945 was the last day battleships mattered in naval warfare. After Yamato sank, no major battleship engagement occurred. The remaining battleships served as bombardment platforms, as anti-aircraft platforms, as symbols, but never again as the decisive weapons they were designed to be. The era ended in the waters southwest of Kyushu, ended with a massive explosion, ended with 2,498 men dying in the water, ended with the largest battleship ever built sliding into the Pacific. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor, hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about battleships that took everything the U.S. Navy had. Real ships, real courage, real sacrifice. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. Are you watching from the United States, United Kingdom, Canada, Australia? Our community stretches across the entire world. You are not just a viewer, You are part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us your location. Tell us if someone in your family served. Just let us know you are here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for making sure Yamato does not disappear into silence. These men and this ship deserve to be remembered, and you are helping make that happen. Helping make that happen. Helping make that happen.